Episode 5, The Whispers Before the Storm. It began on the fourth market day of the seventh moon, just as the morning mist had finished bathing the thatched rooftops of ukpili. Birds flew quietly overhead, as though they sensed the dread hanging in the air. In the homestead of Elder Etikon, a wise and slow-speaking man with a back bent from years of thought, the sound of approaching footsteps broke the stillness. King Oberoni, tall, arrogant, and robed in leopard skin stitched with cowries, marched into the elder's compound with 4 guards behind him, spears raised like angry tongues. Elder Etikon was seated on a carved stool beside his mother, drinking bitter leaf tea when he saw them. His eyes narrowed. Swiftly, he turned to his daughter and grandson. "Akira, Odiyu, go inside, now." But fate, once it opens its eyes, cannot pretend to sleep. King Oberoni had already seen them. "You two, come out," he said coldly, his voice slicing through the air like a dull machete through a yam stalk. Akira, a maiden of barely 16, emerged shyly, hiding behind her father like a frightened antelope. But the king was not moved by tears or trembling knees. With a wave of his hand, he said, "Drag her." The guards obeyed. Akira screamed and clutched her father's wrapper, but they tore her away like a fresh harvest from the earth. The old man could only fall to his knees, beating his chest in helpless sorrow. That morning was just the beginning. King Oberoni began a dark parade through the land of ukpili, moving from compound to compound, plucking daughters like ripe fruits in the bush path. If a girl had breast and innocence, she was dragged. If a family cried, they were flogged. By the time the sun sank beyond the tall hills of Abong, the king had gathered 10 virgins, all draped in palm leaf shawls, eyes red from crying, hearts frozen with shame. He took them to the palace, the same palace the villagers built with love and sweat, and assigned each of them a private chamber. New clothes were made for them, raffia skirts dyed in camwood and coral beads around their necks. Some called them wives, others whispered captives. But they all lived under one roof, serving a man with a heart made of stone. And his terror didn't end there. His guards, now drunk with power, began going from farm to farm, seizing yams, palm oil, cocoyam, smoked bushmeat, and even firewood. Any man who resisted was beaten with canes made from the spine of the ugba tree. "This is for the king," they would shout. And so the people of ukpili, once proud and free, began to weep in silence. But silence is not always surrender. When the moon stopped smiling, the tortoise buries his laughter in the sand, the old women whispered in their kitchens. They pretended. Oh yes, they pretended. They smiled when the king passed. They danced during his festivals. They cheered at his empty speeches. But in their hearts, a storm had begun to form, one whisper at a time. From Okasham to Abong, from the forest edge to the stream banks of Itinaja, the people were waiting. They were biding their time. Even the birds seemed to fly lower, as if watching what would become of the land. Years passed this way, until the day of destiny arrived. On that morning, King Oberoni summoned the entire village to the palace square. "My people," he said, standing with his golden staff in one hand and a goatskin map in the other. "I must embark on a great journey across the red desert beyond the mountains of Obang. I seek gold. Treasures buried by gods. I go to return richer than a river during flood." The villagers clapped, but their hearts were heavy. They nodded, but their eyes burned with silent fire. With him, he took 3 of his strongest guards, men who no longer remembered how to smile. The rest of the villagers followed him to the borderlands of ukpili, where the land fell into thick bush, marked by sacred stones and carved wooden poles. It was there, beneath the abibo tree, with the tall grasses whispering and birds circling like spirits, that the king turned and said, "Keep my palace safe. Let none eat my food or drink my water until I return." The people nodded, bowing low. And then he left. The sound of hooves and marching feet echoed until it vanished into the belly of the forest. As the last echo died away, the villagers turned around. One by one, they marched silently back to the village square, dust rising behind their feet like smoke from a dying fire. Old men, young warriors, women with baskets on their heads, children who had watched their sisters disappear. All stood beneath the ancient Iroko tree, where the wind carried only one message. A man who turns his back to flog the sky forgets that the earth listens. It was time. Their king was gone. Their pain had gathered. Their plan was ready. To be continued.